Founder Circle, and I just want to introduce quickly some of the people who's in the Founder Circle. Would you please stand up?
Stand up. Oh, Art is standing over there.
Yeah. And then Beth. So some of you who already started a startup, and this will be the great group to join in. We keep a small group, usually 8 to 10, and we're going to kick off the new group in the fall. But we're open to discussing opportunity, things like that. So feel free to stop by and talk to me or some of the founders in that group. Okay. And since Roger's here, he's our generous sponsor to providing great food, wine, and this location. So go ahead to have a moment to share what you got.
So thank you all for coming. Procopio is obviously a law firm. It's one of the oldest and largest in Southern California. We've been up here for about 1.5 years, and from the beginning, Ari was very, very passionate about doing something to really help accelerate women in technology. And so in such a short period of time, it is absolutely, truly astounding, the group of women that she's gotten around her, and the things that they're doing in helping women really achieve a lot quicker. And as a law firm, we are just absolutely thrilled to be behind it. As you all know, I've got the 2 daughters that I'm passionate about this movement for, because I really believe that it's going to make a difference. And Vivek was here, I think, 2 weeks ago, and he said basically, 20 women working together can really achieve just unbelievable things. And I just see it happening almost on a daily basis of what you guys are achieving. So I'm just absolutely excited about where you guys are, but where this whole thing is going, because it just is phenomenal. So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
And then Roger just put together the basic vital strategy workshop last week, and it was just, everybody couldn't get enough of it. And so we hope he continues to provide that workshop for us as well. So he's just not a lawyer, more than that. So thank you very much for
I was an entrepreneur, and I tell all my clients, do exactly the opposite of everything I do.
So, and then we have amazing a group of advisor and a startup leaders that come in and really want you guys to succeed. So I myself had my startup at some point. This kind of took off, so I had to decide which way to go. So I kind of put my startup on the side, and I started this one. So I'm not in the position to say I know how to be successful, but I am really passionate about bringing the people who have done it. And Laura is one of the person I totally respect. She has been in the industry. I mean, a lot of people in the Valley, they continue to bring her name up. Laura, did you meet Laura Mather? And I didn't know her business because it's B2B. And so I wasn't sure who she was. And I had an opportunity to meet and I had a chance to talk to her, and I was just really impressed with how she built the company, and just a passion for building a right culture and a right structure to move a company to the next level, instead of just taking on the opportunity that came. And so thank you so much for coming here. And here she is, Laura Mather.
So thank you for having me. It's funny, Ari's talking about the Founder Circle, and I have this image of, hi, I'm Laura, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know why that came to mind, but I'm sure it's just like that. Yes, the first thing is acknowledge you have a problem. But I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to give you a little bit of my background, but in the last few months I've really been starting to look at getting more women involved in startups, getting more women involved in technology type things. I spent a lot of time looking around at things like the ERA group and Astia and Waterboard or Watermark, not Waterboard, Watermark and whole different things. And what Ari's doing here really strikes me as something very unique. So I'm thrilled, one, that she's doing that. I'm thrilled Roger is so supportive. I'm thrilled you all have found this, and hope that it means you can move things forward. Ari asked me to talk about kind of 2 things, culture and exit. what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and just give you some of my background so you have context of where I'm coming from. Then we'll talk a bit about culture, and at the end maybe get to exit. But I'd love to have this be a discussion, a conversation, so please interrupt if I don't see you jump up and down or throw things at me or something. Because I love it when it's interactive. This should actually be your time. So my background, I am a geek. I have a PhD in computer science, a bachelor's in applied math. Started my career at the National Security Agency, which is now all hot in the news. Had no idea about the PRISM thing, though I wasn't surprised, let's say. In 2000, I wanted to get involved in the internet boom. So I looked around. I actually came out here and interviewed at a little company called InfoSeek. To be honest, I was pretty sure my boss would sexually harass me, so I decided not to take that job, which is kind of an interesting statement now. But ended up, of all places, going to work for Britannica.com, which is the online version of Encyclopedia Britannica. They had a research lab down in La Jolla, and I got to do really interesting analytics on people using their website. At the time, Britney Spears was very popular, and one of the things my algorithm discovered was if people queried on Britney Spears, they never actually got to a Britney Spears article. They only saw things on Native American weaponry. And so it was not surprising that those people would not pay money for the results that they were getting. But I helped them to change that search result in particular. In 2003, there was a new phenomenon on the internet, and it was what is now known as phishing. The emails you get that look like they're from a bank or from eBay. And eBay at the time was the hardest hit by this thing called phishing. At the time it was called spoofing. And they needed to hire somebody who was going to combat this, but nobody graduating from college had a degree in fighting phishing. And so they said, okay, what does this person look like? And they decided it was someone who had law enforcement and online experience. And somehow NSA and Britannica came together and they said, okay, maybe you're that person. So I joined eBay in 2003 to fight phishing for them. At the time, I was fighting phishing for both eBay and PayPal. They were one company. And of all the phishing emails in the world, 80% of them targeted either eBay or PayPal. So I was fighting 80% of the whole problem.
By yourself?
And at the time, by myself, yes. And it was a nightmare. To give you an example, at one point, the criminals were launching 3,000 websites a day against either eBay or PayPal that we were tasked with going and getting shut down, which meant calling up the ISP and saying, please shut this down. Oftentimes the ISP was in some other country that didn't speak English and blah, blah. It was really a difficult problem. We had a success in that, I think it was around late 2004, HSBC actually became the most phished brand instead of eBay or PayPal, so we had the "we are number 2" party, woohoo, right? But during my tenure, I also was charged with what was called fraud prevention for the eBay platform. So in addition to phishing, preventing people from doing fake bidding, preventing people from listing. eBay's wonderful for criminals because if you're selling an item, you put the item up on eBay, people bid, if you win, if the bidder wins, they send the money to the seller receives the money and then sends the good. Well, if you're a criminal, just get the money and disappear, right? So I was tasked with finding the people who were listing these fake items on eBay. It was hell. Because the criminals, probably every day there was 3 different attacks I was fighting, whether it was bidding or listing or this phishing or people sending fake emails through the system, or you're not allowed to sell fake Louis Vuitton or whatever on eBay, and I was dealing with people who were doing that. And so it was very, very hard. But at the same time, it was really rewarding. eBay had about 80 million users at the time, and I really felt like I was protecting 80 million people, and I loved it, right? I was super passionate about it. But I was also really, it was really exhausting because I'd get an email from an eBay member, they were called, not customer, a member, and they would say, wow, I saw this listing for this Rolex, and it was only $2,000. It's like a $6,000 Rolex. And I sent $2,000 via Western Union to Italy, and this was 3 weeks ago. Why hasn't the watch shown up? And I'm thinking, yeah, that's my fault. Sorry. So it was really emotionally exhausting. And I left in mid-2006 mostly because I was just exhausted. But what happened was, because I was no longer under the constant barrage of these new attacks, and this is getting to your question earlier of why did I get into startups, it gave me the perspective to step back and say, should I have done something more strategic, right? I was very much doing tactical things. If there's this attack today, what can I do to stop it? And I didn't have kind of the space to step back and say, what system did I need to detect a new attack as it was starting, right? Instead of sort of hand-to-hand combat. So I left eBay, and when I was working at another company that did anti-phishing, but I had the space to think about that, and I realized we had built a tool that was looking at web traffic, but we were looking at it at a server level. I'm getting way geeky here. And I realized we should have looked at it at a user level. We should have looked at each individual user instead of just what's happening on a server. So I went back to a developer I'd worked with at eBay, and I said, shouldn't we have built this but swizzled it just one dimension different? And he went, yeah, of course, right? And so we talked about it and decided that we would start a company to do this. Now, this was in 2008. We founded Silvertail in January 2008, right when the recession was hitting. Yep.
So when you were back at eBay, you guys wrote the algorithms that looked at the... So you just thought about a way of which you could... It's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we had just looked at the wrong dimension. We were looking at a server, and we needed to actually look at a user level. And we did the smart thing, though. We went, before my co-founder left eBay, he was at PayPal at the time, he had moved to PayPal. We went and hired a lawyer. We got a very good lawyer, and he talked to us about how we can get him, my co-founder, out and not have any intellectual property issues associated with this. So my co-founder left in November of 2007, had a 6-week cooling off period, and then started from scratch. He had no code, no documentation, nothing, and built our system. Basically, it was the same system he had built in eBay, but again, on this other dimension. And we founded the company in 2008. Now, again, this gets to culture, but a big reason why I wanted to do this was how rewarding it was to protect 80 million people. And I figured, these criminals are not just hitting eBay. I knew they weren't, right? I had talked to banks, and I could see the effects of it on other websites. So, you know, at the time I would be using a website, maybe Nike.com, and suddenly they'd put up this weird thing where you're not allowed to email customer support. And I'd say, why is that? Well, of course, at eBay, the criminals had done a denial of service attack by emailing 1 million emails to customer support so that people couldn't report when something went wrong, right? That was happening at Nike, right? I didn't know, but I could kind of figure it out, that they were just hitting everybody. So I figured I could go back to eBay and rebuild this thing, or I could go protect lots of brands. And that's what I wanted to do. And so we founded Silvertail January 2008. Raising Series A was the hardest thing I've done in my life, including PhD and birthing a child, and it really was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had never done venture capital before. I was going and presenting to VCs, and they were saying, the market sucks, security's dead, enterprise software is dead. You guys have never done this, you don't have the right team, and I would have to get myself up again and go to the next meeting and smile and be enthusiastic, and I really got down this sort of compartmentalizing of I am here and then I'd go home and just be totally deflated. But we finally found a couple investors that were willing to put money in. Yeah.
How did you transition back from defeated to the next presentation?
Just reminding ourselves that we understood this better than the investors, right? And to be honest, it's funny, our lawyer was one of our best cheerleaders, which he should be, by the way, because he took a bet on us, right? But he said, you are like one of 6 people in the whole world that understand this problem because you've lived it. Those people don't know. And if you're gonna go protect the people, you've gotta give it everything you have. And what we did is at every step of the way, every single day, and by this time I was married to my co-founder, but every single day we would say to each other, do we regret any of this yet? And we decided that the day we said yes, we were done, right? We would go get what we call real jobs. And every day we said, no, we're learning something here, right? And we had very hard lines. We didn't have any salary, and we said we could go about 6 months without salary. 6 months came and went. And we had a lot of really hard discussions. And to be honest, what happened in the end is when we were trying to get all of the legal documents together, a couple of the investors were being kind of annoying about some terms. We finally just said, forget it. We're walking away from this thing because it's too hard. We've used up so much money, blah, blah. And we weren't bluffing, we were gone. And they came back and said, never mind, we'll just deal with those terms. So it's a lot of real soul searching and real belief in what you're doing and real conviction.
Was the background of all the founders the same?
Was the
background?
Yeah. So my co-founder was a developer, but he had also worked on what was called the risk management side of eBay. So he had this amazing experience where he understood everything from customer experience all the way down to bits, moving through a site the size of eBay. And I was much more on the business side. So I'm a geek, but he's really a geek. But we didn't have anyone with a business background, right? We didn't have that MBA type, and that's what our investors were very concerned about for the team. And so we told them that we wanted to hire a CEO, and that we were going to hire a CEO. And that was kind of one of the criteria of getting funded, is that we would hire a CEO.
How much time did it take you to raise Series A?
So we started essentially January 1st, 2008. We closed Series A September 29th, 2008. It was the day Washington Mutual was seized by the government, which I know because our money was coming from Washington Mutual. And I thought we were just never going to get this dang thing done. Oh my God.
Excitement. Come on now.
Exactly.
How did you evaluate
kill you.
How did we
evaluate the company?
How did we evaluate the company?
The valuation.
Oh, the valuation. Yeah. So so it's an interesting thing. Our investors basically said that well, for Series A we always take 50%, and we wanted to raise $2 million, and originally they said so it would be 2 on a 2, right? Two on a 2 pre. And at the time we were very far along in discussions with LinkedIn to build this thing for them. And we actually were really stupid, and we walked away from the investors. We said, no, that's not a good valuation. Mm-hmm. And so they came back and said, fine, we'll do a 3 pre. So it was originally a $2 million on a 3 pre. Now we had to raise, we had to reopen the A about a year later, and we raised another 2. So we ended up with a $4 million on a 3 pre. And it's funny, I see, yeah, ouch, but bless you. It's funny, I see now really interesting valuation calculations, and that's never been the way my VCs have dealt with it. They've always said, we always take this much of a company at this stage, you need to raise this much, therefore the valuation is, you just do the math. That's the way it always works, the way I've seen it anyway.
And did you have a prototype while you were raising? So it's basically just PowerPoint, slideware?
Yeah, we had Etherware. We did have an amazing team that was ready to sign on and that had agreed to sign on once the money was in the bank. Developers coming out of Google, who had built 2 or 3 of these systems before, so that helped, but we had almost nothing. We were so lucky that I wouldn't have invested in us now that I look back. So we were very, very lucky. So we closed Series A September 29th, 2008. Spent 2009 building the product. We fired our first CEO. That was one of our big mistakes. Yep.
Sorry, so why did they invest?
Why did they invest?
Yeah,
They saw.
The team or
They saw again that we were the experts in our field, right? We were 2 of the 6 people in the whole world who understood this problem and understood how big it was going to get. And they did a lot of reference checks on us, right? Because at the time we were talking to LinkedIn and eBay and PayPal and Bank of America, and they called people and said, "Is this a big problem?"
Did you have letters of intent or?
Nope, we didn't have anything like that. So we were very lucky. Again, you probably wouldn't have invested in us. I wouldn't blame you. So yeah, so it was Etherware. Yeah.
So during this 9 months of fundraising, or almost
Yeah.
10 months,
Yeah.
basically, like, your full-time job was fundraise.
It was.
And your co-founder was also
He was building the first version of the product, and we had something that we could kind of, demo is the wrong word. We took it to eBay and they laughed at us. They're like, "Yeah, we can't use that. I don't know what you're talking about." But he was building essentially the architecture of it, right, the back end, and he built a little UI, and our investor called it. The investor said, "Next time, can you make it not so cartoony?" So it wasn't the greatest UI.
Have you ever rebuilt the system? How many times did you say have you rebuilt the system?
I would say, so part of having this amazing engineering team, just to give you perspective, when we had sort of our core engineering team, which was 7 engineers, the average age was 49 of our engineers. These, again, we had to process, the biggest system we ever dealt with was E-Trade. At Market Open, E-Trade gets 300,000 clicks a second, and they're all encrypted. So you have to decrypt them, process them, re-encrypt them. So you can't just hire somebody who, went to community college, unfortunately. You need people who have processed this type of data. So it's a different type of engineer. But one of their things, they love to refactor. So I would guess from the time we had our initial prototype working in like mid-2009-ish till today, if you look at every component of our system, it's probably been rebuilt 8 or 9 times. But just kind of constantly, right? It's not that we say we're going to re-architect the whole thing. Our engineers are they have such integrity that they say, "I built this and I don't like how it's built now. It's not working the way it needs to work. I'm going to rebuild it." It was fantastic. We're so lucky.
Culture thing though, right?
It is, it's a culture thing. And that was a big part of it. Our lead architect, he was our very first hire. I couldn't believe it. He comes in and he says, "I'm not joining unless you have source control. I'm not joining unless you have a bug tracking system." I thought, "You're the developer, you're supposed to hate these things, right?" And he said, "No, I have worked in environments where we didn't have this and it sucked." And he just had this real, he insisted that you could not check in your code until you had all of the appropriate unit tests that would run on it, where QA could push a button and QA the entire thing once you check in your code. I mean, that's beautiful, right? So it's a lot about integrity, and that's a big part of the culture. Actually, question here.
So, in a good way, I noticed that you're saying he a lot, and I'm assuming because the engineers are he's.
Yep.
And that's so cool.
No, well, it's not great.
So I was looking at statistics for graduation 2009, 2010 across different fields, and women are trending toward what they seem to be more interested in, which is non-core STEM degrees.
Okay.
So it can be biology or it can be psychometrics, but they're not considered core STEM technology.
Okay.
A limiting factor subsequently is that women don't always have the literacy or the knowledge of what kinds of technologies they should go after in order to enable scaling of their companies.
Yeah.
And then we either have to go find some men to help us, or we study some innovative programs other places where there are more STEM graduates.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or
So I have lots of thoughts on that, but I actually think that's a whole different subject. And Aria, it might be a good subject for one of these things, and I'd be happy to attend and just give my thoughts on that. And so maybe we can talk afterwards.
Okay,
I just don't want to derail it too much. Did you have a question?
I was actually just gonna, the things you were saying about development and the respect and need for QA and those types of processes, what you were talking about, goes back to culture,
It is.
which is very tough, if you will, per se, to implement among developers'
It is.
psyche. So I was just gonna ask if you could speak more on that and the type of culture that, or sorry, the type of process that your first lead developer advocated for.
Yeah, so here's what I would recommend. Mike and I, so first of all, when I started Silvertail, I kept thinking culture is really important to me. I had no idea what that meant. I really, really didn't know. And I knew I didn't know, but I knew that it was important. And so it took me a long time to figure out what culture meant. And what culture to me means now is every single decision that's made gets made from a certain place. And you want people to be in the place that makes the right decision. So an example is with these developers, the very first hire you make, if that person isn't going to insist on a source control and on bug, then you're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to nail that to the wall and say it's not changing from this. And then it will happen, right? If you start it from the beginning and progress it out, it will happen. Because again, this lead architect I heard him yelling at people, you checked that in and you didn't have unit tests, roll it back. Seriously, get it out of there, because that is not what we're going to do. And it just, for us, the way we looked at culture in general was we were bringing integrity to the internet, right? We were out there protecting accounts, showing where there were criminals instead of customers. And so we really looked at it as we were bringing integrity to the internet, and we wanted integrity to be part of everything we did. And therefore, any decision that got made, it was pretty easy. Does this bring integrity or not? End of story. And it really made decisions, I hate to say easy, but easier than they would be when you've got someone who's like, that this is going to get done really fast. And yeah, it's not going to be whoa, it's not going to be perfect? Is it not going to add integrity? It may take away some integrity of our system. Then we're not doing it. It's just not, and you have to stick to that. And it's hard. And but I think in a lot of situations, it's a way to look at your business as far as kind of what you bring. And we haven't gone around and talked about different businesses, but I know or someone who's done the golf thing, I could see things of, does this make a golfer's game better? And maybe that is the decision on everything, right? And that has to do with whether or not you have a bug tracking system, because if you don't, your code is not going to make a golfer's game better.
Ours is ease of use. We measure everything against how intuitive, how stupid
There you
is
go.
it,
There you go. And so I think that from whatever it is you are building, you can bring something to that. Even if you're creating spreadsheets, right? It's your job to make it so that people can do the calculations in the fastest, most accurate way possible. And that should be your culture and your mission. And so for developers, we have this culture of integrity. For the company in general, we had what we called our superhero culture, right? Because we were out there protecting accounts. I'll go through the rest of the story soon, but by probably mid-2012, we were protecting about 1 billion online accounts for E-Trade and Capital One and PayPal and StubHub and Sears and the CIA. And so we told everyone that they were superheroes. We named our conference rooms the Hall of Justice and the Batcave. Our servers were Iron Man and the Wonder Twins, and when you have 1 billion servers, you come up with really interesting. We had all the 3 Charlie's Angels, right? Because you run out of superheroes after a while. For our bathroom key, we got one little Superman thing and one little Wonder Woman thing, and that's how you went to the bathroom, right? Is with the little bathroom key. So we were very clear to constantly reinforce that. We also did something where I wanted it to be more frequent, but every few weeks we would have what we call our fraud analysts come in and talk about different attacks they saw in the field. And one example was at Sears. There was this really interesting, they had a sweepstakes, and the Russian mafia had a bot that entered the sweepstakes millions and millions of times and won every prize. The Russian mafia won every prize of the sweepstakes at Sears. This is a drag for Sears because the US law says you have to award the prizes. You can't run a sweepstakes and then not award the prizes. And the whole reason they did it, right, this one sweepstakes cost them, I don't know, 30 grand or something. And they do that to get leads, right, to get email addresses of potential customers. But it was all just garbage, right? Because it was all Russian mafia email addresses. They didn't want to market to these email addresses. So they spent $30,000 on something that wasn't going to help them. We were able to go in and find this and help them stop it. And so we would have people come, and we would even have Sears come in and talk to our company and say, this is the type of thing you're stopping. This is what you're helping us with. And then the developers would say, well, no wonder I stayed late last night, right? I'm helping protect these accounts, and I'm helping to save this money, and I'm helping to thwart the Russian mafia, and that's kind of cool, right? So we really made this part of the full culture, yeah.
How did you do that? Like, in what setting? Like, when the Sears people came in and when the
We had
superhero on the monthly basis came in, what type of setting was it?
We called our company all-hands meeting, and people would come, and we had sales team around the world, and they would dial in, and we would always prep the customer. One time we didn't do a very good job of that, and the customer got up and was like, well, this is what sucks and this sucks. I'm like, that's not what we wanted with this meeting. But we were very clear to, mostly prep the customer, and they loved doing that because you know what happened after they would come? So Sears comes, meets with us. The next week they have a problem with the system, they call up somebody, they're like, heck yeah, I'll help you, I know you, right? You came and you talked to me and we shared a bagel or whatever, so it really, getting your people as close to the customer as possible, and this is even true in a consumer environment. When I was at eBay, when I had a team that was dealing with trust and safety issues, I made my team call victims and say, tell me what happened. Tell me, why did you decide to send $2,000 to Italy? I want to understand. And by the way, people wanted to be heard. And I was always sort of worried about making these phone calls, and yet people appreciated it because you reached out and they knew that they had kind of screwed up, right? And it wasn't all their fault, but they wanted to be heard. And so keeping people as close to the customer as possible is really good. And there's ways to do it that you don't, I could tell you stories of taking developers to meetings with customers. That was a very bad idea. But there's ways to do it again in sort of an all-hands thing. And there were definitely times we had to also control developers on what they were asking the customers and such. There was a few of like, we'll answer that later, moving on to the next question. But it worked really, really well. And to this day, people tell me that it feels like a family to them, right? And we made it very clear that we cared about people. Another thing we did, and this gets a little more to your diversity question, we didn't do this on purpose, but when we started Silvertail, our lead architect, he had been working at Google, he had been working 80-hour weeks. He had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And he said, look, I will join your company, but twice a week, I want 90 minutes to go hang out at my preschool, at the kids' preschool. And we said, great, right? Put it on your calendar so I don't go booking over it, right? But just do it. And he did that. And then we hired a QA manager about 7 or 8 months later, and he said, I'd really love to coach my kids' t-ball team, but it means I have to leave at 3 p.m. every Wednesday. And we said, geez, as long as it's on your calendar, we don't care. Go do that. A couple things we realized. One, having the men do that, first of all, makes it so there's less stigma. So if you can get men to do it first, it's not just that the women need to disappear. So that was awesome. But everybody was super loyal, right? If you're going to have people that abuse that, you don't want them in your company anyway, so get rid of them. But then when it came time that we had to work a weekend because E-Trade went down because they had 310,000 clicks in a second, people were like, heck yeah, I'll come in. I spent, 3 hours at my preschool this week that I never got to do at Google, and I know my daughters, right? So I'm happy to do that. And I think that ended up creating this culture of acceptance and flexibility, but also understanding and we were all a family. And when Mike and I had our son 18 months ago, we brought him in like once a week because we wanted people to feel like the company was part of our family, right? And we had the little picture of him in the womb, and people took it and blew it up and said superhero in training, right, on it. And it just, we were like that. And so then we got all these little onesies, so whenever anybody had a baby, they got a little superhero in training onesie, when they came home from the hospital. And it was something that we were very purposeful about, and it was something we talked about a lot, and we were very, very worried about. And another thing that Mike did, which was really great, is he would, once a week, he would take a group of employees out, just kind of a random group, either all the new people or a group of people who've been around a while, and just check in with them and say, what's going on, right? What are you thinking? Are you hearing weird things? Is there anything worrying you? Is there anything you love and hate? And people, again, just love to be heard. And that hour a week that he took probably did the most good of anything. And when we had 50 people, it would take him 6 months to get through the entire set of employees, but who cares, right? I mean, people get heard every 6 months, plus they felt like they could go to us whenever they needed to.
How many employees do you have?
So Silvertail, when we sold in December, had 110. I took my son there today. I'm actually no longer with the company. I left in April 1st. I left, but we took our son there today just to see everybody. I think they've got about 150, so they're definitely still growing. And still, again, it was like a family. They were all excited to see our little boy, and just, I'm very, very proud of what we did with the culture. And I will tell you that in some ways we worried about it too much. We hired, after Series B, we hired a set of executives. We hired a VP of marketing, a VP of engineering, a CFO. Did we hire anybody else? I think so, but I can't remember.
You mentioned the CEO.
The CEO we hired a long time ago, 2010, and he was a big part of the culture too. Let me say a little bit about the CEO. Okay, so we hired a CEO when we first got our Series A funding. That was an absolute catastrophe. This gets to culture a little bit, but if you're ever choosing a founding/executive team, the thing that I find that kills founding and executive teams the fastest is difference in work ethic. What happens is if some of the team works harder than the rest, resentment forms very quickly and gets out of control, and I've seen a lot of teams crumble because of a difference in work ethic. That was the problem with our first CEO. We got rid of him in July of 2009. Then we started interviewing we started before we got rid of him, interviewing for another CEO. I interviewed more than 40 candidates. The big difference was that, and Ari's met our CEO, and she'll attest to this, but it seemed like every candidate that I would meet come in and say, here's the reasons you're broken, and I will fix it. And Tim came in and said, you see a vision that is like this, but I see a vision that's like this, right? And so it wasn't that we were broken, it's that we were better than we thought we were, right, is the way he saw it. And so he came in with this energy and this enthusiasm. And Mike is definitely an extrovert, but when we were working, we would be very much heads down. So our first little office, we called it the Mint because the walls were painted mint green, and Tim is weird and was like, we'll call it the Mint. But when we were in the Mint, there'd be 8 of us and we'd be working and be all quiet. And Mike and I knew that we needed to have some enthusiasm, but we didn't know how to add that. And Tim is the type where you're sitting here all working and it's quiet, and he pops up and he's like, everybody to gelato, right? And he would make everybody get up and we'd all go to gelato. And I just would never think of that because I'm busy and whatever, but he is like that. Tim is a fireball. So that was a big part of it too. Plus he was a great sales guy, very good strategist, all of those things. So Tim as a CEO, we hired him in 2010. He was fantastic. And now I was going somewhere else.
You were hiring some executives.
Oh yes, so then we hired these executives, and at the executive level there was actually quite a bit of angst, which I think is normal. But we were very worried that that was impacting the culture below the executives. And it turned out it wasn't. Mike again was checking in with all the employees sort of on this rotating basis. Nobody saw it. But we were very worried about it. So it's just something to realize that there are certain things that happen that people, and I think if we didn't have that culture to start with, people would have noticed it, but they were so comfortable in the culture we had created that they didn't feel like they needed to look for cracks. I think that was part of it. So it's just, at the top you get a very different view from what's happening in the lower ranks, and it's important to understand both. So it's important to understand that at both levels. Okay, we have 15 minutes. We'll do a couple more questions on culture, and then I want to answer specific questions on exit. So,
how did you decide what role you wanted to have when you were founding this company? Because you could have been the CEO, right?
I could have, yeah. So I absolutely could have been the CEO, and the way that this has to do with sort of culture and protecting accounts as well. I could have been the CEO, I would have stumbled, I would have recovered, but it would have taken me a while to grow the company. And I figured I can protect more accounts if I can hire a CEO who's done it before, where I get to learn from the stumbles he's already had, and he can grow this thing faster. And that gets to the acquisition as well, as we can actually protect more accounts under a bigger umbrella than we could on our own. We could grow it ourselves, but it would take us a lot longer. And so I had never done it. I wanted to learn from him, and I learned some amazing lessons. He was phenomenal at a lot of things. So
what was your position in Mike's position?
So Mike was CTO, which was easy. I did most of the marketing. I wore like 27 hats, right? I was doing HR and marketing and IT and payroll and blah, blah. But mostly I was marketing. I was kind of the thought leader. So in the end, I ended up with the title of Chief Visionary, which I liked a lot. Mike had no issue with that because sometimes CTOs want to be the visionary, but I was Chief Visionary, and I was doing the speaking and writing white papers and blogs and stuff, and it was great. Yes?
You came up with the idea, right?
Mike and I did.
All together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there any way you could be the lone founder, or you needed a co-founder?
I needed a co-founder.
You recommend that we all look for a co-founder?
No, I don't recommend that. I don't think you need it. I think if there's any way you can, well, co-founders are tricky, right? Yeah. And that's the thing, is there's benefits, but there's risks. And so it kind of depends on what risks you have and whether or not those really need to be mitigated, or if, you know, you're okay on your own. And the thing is, I couldn't build out the team Mike could, and so he needed to have equal footing with me in order to build out that development team.
So that the next question is, if you have a co-founder, should it be like a 50-50 enterprise or 50-50?
That's what we did. Our lawyers had us do 49.9999, and I had 50.01 or something, but we were married, so it was community property anyway. But we did just slightly different. Yes?
So piggyback on for her question though, if you're not the technical person, if you were truly just marketing, not the technical, wouldn't you need a technical co-founder?
Maybe not a co-founder. Maybe not a co-founder, right? Okay. So if you already have the idea and you've gotten a lot of thought behind it and a lot of market research is done, and it kind of depends on the traction you have, and it's going to depend on the person too, right? There's going to be some people who are like, I will be co-founder. You may want to avoid those people, but and there may be situations where you want them to feel equal. And then there's situations where it's better if you have slightly more power. Another thing I've seen done is where you're the founder and someone else is a co-founder. So you're not co-founder, but they are co-founder. right? So then it's this slightly hierarchical
Can you
system.
do that? Do you recommend that?
If that, it's, in certain situations, I think that would be a good way to go.
Okay.
So it's obvious that they're part of the founding team. That's another thing, is founding team member. A way to make people feel good about it. To be honest, if anyone has the ego that it's something that they need, that would be a big red flag for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that comment.
Yeah,
When it
that
comes to
would-
your titles.
Exactly.
We eliminated them for the first 3 years, honestly, they were just
Yeah.
in the titles, and so,
I think
on
that's
purpose.
smart. I think that's really smart, because ego, that was one thing, ego, we were very good at not hiring any egos for a long time, and that really helped us. Question?
How did you protect your idea? Like, how you are unique, you are one among the six. So
Yeah.
how did you? What are the steps that you actually?
So we filed patents, software patents. Talk to your lawyer about whether that's a good idea or not. But to be honest, the big differentiator was because we not only understood the problem, but we had the team that could process data for the largest sites on the web. Those two together are very hard to find, right? There could be other people who understood the problem, but they would have a very hard time finding a team that could process E-Trade data. So maybe they could go protect San Diego Federal Credit Union, fine, have at it, but they weren't going to be able to protect these big sites. And in our exit, RSA acquired us. RSA is a division of EMC. At one point, they actually said they were going to go build it, and then they came back to us and said, oops, we weren't able to. So I do want to, we have 10 minutes, so I wanted to, and I can stay after a bit, but let me take a quick poll. How many people the choice is going to be continue talking about culture or talk a little bit about exit? How many people want to continue talking about culture? How many people want to talk about exit? Okay. Then the next question, I could give you a little bit of an overview of the exit, or you guys can just ask questions. How many people want to overview first? How many want to ask questions? Okay, so I'll do just this quick overview. We were originally approached, okay, so first of all, when you're thinking about exit, Series A, VCs asked us, what is your exit strategy? The advice I got, which I very much believe in, was to say, we don't have one. We're going to build this business. We're going to build it as fast as we can. We're going to make it the best business we can be. It can be an IPO. There may be other things that happen along the way, and we're going to go gangbusters. That was the answer we gave. It seemed to work pretty well. This may be a different time, but that's the answer that we gave. The next thing to keep in mind is that as you take different tranches of funding, your exit possibilities change. So we took a total of $4 million in our Series A. Our investors would have been happy with a probably $40 to $80 million acquisition. Series B, we took an additional 20 or 22 million or something. At that point, our choice was death or glory, right? We were either going to get a huge acquisition or exit or nothing. And so it's this interesting thing when you're making a decision about how much money to raise, understand what path it puts you on of that decision, because that was not clear to me until we were originally at Series B trying to raise 10, at which point we probably could have had an acquisition at 150, 200-ish, and our investors would have been okay. But when we took money from Andreessen Horowitz and they wanted to put in 20 million, we knew we were starting down the death or glory path. So it's just something that you need to consider when you're raising your money is what they're going to expect. Now, that doesn't mean you should plan for an acquisition. It doesn't mean you should plan for IPO. Again, build the dang thing as fast as you can and as well as you can, but just understand that you may be limiting potential options by certain decisions. RSA originally approached us in 2010 to acquire us. It was not formal. The CEO of RSA sat down with me at breakfast and said, we want to acquire you. I thought that was what they do. I thought that was formal. It's not at all. There was no letter of intent. We went through a whole dance on diligence where they basically tried hard to get the secret sauce. They came back, offered $8 million for the company. At the time, we had Our customers were Sears, the CIA, PayPal, and ING Direct, so we said no way. We then received a letter of intent in June of 2012. The letter of intent was at $200 million. We went through a whole dance on diligence, and I have lots of stories on what not to do with bankers, how to do diligence well, and we closed the deal at $250 in December. We left $25 million on the table. They could have gone up to $275, and that sucked really bad.
How did it turn out that they
So we knew it. As in any negotiation, especially for big money, there's lots of actors, right? And so they had the champion that was there to like cheer us along and kind of tell us how to avoid some of the pitfalls that was coming. It was actually on the acquisition board of EMC. And so he told us, he said, this is how much money they have budgeted for this. And then we negotiated some, got them up to $250, and then we hired bankers. We hired Frank Quattrone's group. He's supposed to be the top tier bankers, but the big problem was we didn't get Frank Quattrone. We got his minions, and they completely bungled the whole thing. What they did is they shopped us around. We went and talked to F5, and we talked to McAfee, and we talked to IBM and HP and Cisco. And because we already had a letter of intent and we needed to move really fast, none of the big guys could move that fast. And we were talking big numbers, so you can't get some little guy to acquire you at that big number. Even Akamai said we were out of their price range, right? So, but what the bankers did is instead of continuing to negotiate with RSA while we were talking to these other people, they went silent with RSA. And so when we went back to RSA, but we didn't have another offer, RSA knew we had shopped around and nobody else was interested. So why should they negotiate with us, right? So we ended up at $250. And then the bankers charged us $5 million for doing that. So that
Go down from the 250?
they could have gone down and they didn't. So that in some ways that was a good thing of theirs, but they had screwed us over before, so I kind of look at that as retribution. But it was heartbreaking to leave that on the table. Yeah.
Did you guys approach eBay?
There's no way. So this is not eBay's business, and we actually had a letter from eBay's general counsel saying that we fully own this because they never were going to go into this space. So they make money on helping people auction off items, not protecting the internet. So no, we didn't
could have
talk
put
to
it
them.
up for sale?
Yeah, we could have auctioned it, but we tried and that didn't work.
So eBay didn't have any issues that you started with the idea?
No, it was great. Their general counsel was a friend of ours, and the day he left to go to Facebook, he sent me an email saying, "You are free and clear on intellectual property." I was like, yes. So that was good. In the last few minutes, so we talked a little bit about how the bankers screwed things up. We can talk about dealing with the investors and how they did not want to sell at 200 or 250, or we could talk about really great ways of doing diligence during acquisition. How many people vote for really great ways of doing diligence during acquisition? How many people vote for how to deal with the investors who don't want to sell during that time? Oh, half and half. We'll do both, and if people have to leave, they have to leave. Fair? So, dealing with the investors, Andreessen Horowitz absolutely did not want to sell at 250 or 200. They had invested only 18 months before. They had just sold one of their other investments, a company called Nicira. Nicira had $2 million in revenue and sold for $1.2 billion to VMware, also an EMC company. And they are a death or glory VC, right? They are in it for either the IPO, the Facebook, Skype they sold for $8 billion, I think, to Microsoft or something. So those are the types of deals. We used to say that it had to start with a B, right? $1 billion. So they were very much against us selling. One of the subtleties was Mike and I really wanted to sell to RSA, and a big reason was, again, we could grow the company, but we were at this stage where we would either have to raise Series C, which meant eventually going to an IPO, by the way. If we raised Series C, we would have to do IPO, because we would have to raise 30 or 40 million, and then you're talking, you have to do IPO to get that money back. Oh, and then if we raised Series C, we would have to build out a sales team, we'd have to build out a marketing team. We could do that, but there's huge risk in that, right? Because, again, we hadn't done it before. At the time, we had been negotiating with Apple for about 8 months. We had agreed on the price in the very beginning, so it wasn't we were negotiating price. It was going to be $12 million for 2 years. But it was all these little niggling things that Apple wanted to nail down because we're little bitty Silvertail. We had 50 employees or something at the beginning of the negotiation. When we signed the deal with RSA, I think it took 2 weeks to close Apple because RSA went to them and said, look, you're already an RSA customer. Let's just add an addendum to your current contract and we're done. And they said, great. And $12 million later, there it is, right? So that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to plug into this machine that does marketing and does sales and already has it built and knows what it looks like, and it's not perfect. It's not perfected, but I know it works. Whereas otherwise I'd have to go build it myself, and there's just all these possibilities that it wasn't going to work. And so that was the decision point for me. Here's the subtlety. If I were to go to my investor and say, I really think we need to take this deal, if the board decided not to take it, I would have been fired, right? Because I obviously didn't have faith in the company or where it was going. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't go to the board and say, I really think we should take this deal. Instead, I was coached, and this was beautiful coaching, to go, especially to the Andreessen board member, and say, wow, this is really hard. You know, I could see building it ourselves and going big, and that's awesome, and we could do it, and it's going to be great. I can see selling and plugging into their marketing and their sales engines. I don't really know, but if you made me choose, my gut kind of says probably we should sell, right? So it had to be that I was right on the line, and then if we didn't sell, I never said we should have sold, right? So think about that if you're dealing with this going forward, that you have to be very careful about what message you're sending to your board and how, depending on what happens, that's going to impact you later. Something I didn't think about at all, because I was ready to go to the investor and say, you guys are crazy, let's get the heck out of this, right? But I didn't do that, and I'm really glad, because again, if we hadn't sold, I probably would have been fired almost immediately. That's a subtlety, yeah.
Other than this, the coach that you referred to, were there other people involved who sort of, that you went to for guidance?
Absolutely. So Mike and I have this set of advisors, and we've been very good about getting a very experientially diverse set of advisors. So we have advisors who were successful in startups and who failed. Mm-hmm. We have advisors who were VCs and who have never even done startups, right? We have advisors who are on the business side and on the development side and all of this, which is part of the reason why I'm very passionate about women, because it's hard to find women as advisors. But we had a set of advisors that we could go to. The key is, let's say we had 5 of them. It was kind of different depending on each different situation. If you go to 5 advisors, you're going to get 5 different answers. At the end of the day, you have to trust your gut. But we called it data collection, right? Let's go collect all the data, and then we'll trust our gut in the end. And people would just have really interesting ways of looking at it. I never thought about the fact that if I go to my investor and say, dang it, let's sell, that I would probably get fired.
Who
right?
gave you that advice?
One of our investors, one of our board members.
Was he on the board?
Yep. So we were really lucky.
What did that mean? Because you had invested in the company, so.
I had invested. They can fire you. So, I mean, at that time I owned, after the Series B, I think I owned 5.5% of the company. I mean, very, very small, remember?
Wow.
So
we were just sacrificing.
Yeah, I could have been, right? And I wasn't, but I could have been really easily. So it's just, there's all these things that you have to kind of keep in mind, all these moving pieces. So eventually we did convince, what happened is the board member said we had to hire Frank Quattrone. We should have fired him. We negotiated, we ended up with the $250, and by that time, we were running out of money, because if we didn't take this deal, we should have been raising Series C, and so we kind of had to make the choice, and again, to Andreessen's credit, they came to us, they said, we really, really don't think you should do this, we think you should go for, IPO, and you can get there, and blah, blah, but if you really want to, this is what we'll do, and again, well, it's a really hard decision, blah, blah, right? I had to do my whole 45-second spiel. But they did, they listened to us, and they did what we wanted in the end. So to their credit, they did that. And so that's how we pushed them over the edge. Diligence. So a couple of things on diligence. There was 3 things my CEO just kicked absolute butt on for diligence. The first is, so he's been through several acquisition cycles in the past, several of them that didn't work, which is the greatest thing, right? Because then you learn why they don't work. The first reason that they didn't work, when you kind of agree to terms on the acquisition, the first thing they do is they send you the spreadsheet of the documents they need to be sure you're like solvent and such. So we got this spreadsheet of, at the time it was 800 documents they wanted to see. Eventually it became 1,500 documents they wanted to see, but it started as 800. And what they do is they set up what's called a data room, an electronic repository, sort of Dropbox-like. And they want you to upload it to this data room, and then the employees of the acquiring company, some employees have access to it to see things. Now what my CEO realized in his previous attempted acquisition was people would upload a document to the data room. The acquiring company for us had 80 people who had access to the data room. So if you uploaded a document, 80 people went and looked at it. If you realized something was wrong and you put up a new document, you had to go tell 80 people, you need to go back and look at this document because we made a mistake. That is not it's very painful, right? It's not fun. So we had a process where every single document, all 1,500 of the eventual documents that went to the data room, were checked by 4 people before they were uploaded. They were checked by me, the CEO, our CFO, and then we had a full-time project manager that we stole from engineering to work on this acquisition diligence process. And she would do the final check just on formatting and just to make sure things look kind of consistent, just kind of a gut check. We iterated a lot between the 4 of us before things went into the data room. There were some documents we probably looked at 20 or 30 times. In the 2 weeks we were uploading documents, only 1 of the 1,500 did we iterate in the data room. So we nailed that, and I think it made us look like we had our act together. The second thing the CEO did that was really good is what they do is they wanted a 2-day presentation on everything from market to product to IT, blah, everything. And they sent us this agenda that was our 2 days worth of presentations to them. They were going to fly out, they flew out about 20 people because RSA is based in Boston. So they flew out 20 people and they were going to do a Monday and a Tuesday of this presentation. They gave us the agenda the Monday before, so we had 1 week. Tim, our CEO, sectioned off the agenda and gave pieces to everyone. He had no pieces, which was good because he had a lot to do. So he gave pieces to everyone, told them about how many slides should be in each section. People had till end of day Wednesday to get him first draft. He spent Thursday either reviewing them himself or bringing people in and going through their slides with them. They would make changes. Friday, we went through all of them again. We all came into the office on Saturday, and we ran through the entire 2 days on Saturday and went through the whole thing. We made changes. We all came into the office Sunday. We ran through the entire 2 days again. I spent Sunday night doing something ridiculous, which is I made sure the thank you slide at the end of every single presentation was the same, right? Because in the end we had like 42 presentations that were given. But in the meeting, there was 2 interesting comments. The first was about 3/4 of the way through the first day, I heard someone say, we should buy this company just for their slideware, right? Because we just looked so crisp and so together and professional, right? So it's $250 million, and believe it or not, it comes down to 2 days of presentations and 1,500 documents. It really does. So it's something to keep in mind. And then the second comment we got was from the VP of Sales of RSA. She sent a text to Tim and it said she had just been to diligence of another company that they didn't end up buying. And she said 2 days of diligence was them. She was looking for something to poke her eyes out. And 2 days of diligence for us, she couldn't wait to hear more, right? So we just came across really, really sharp. That was good. The third thing that Tim did that was brilliant, he had in a previous negotiation, he was selling a company before to Symantec. And what happens is you go through all this diligence, lots and lots of work, and then there's a couple months where it's just the lawyers kind of haggling over little bitty things. And you're kind of back to running the business, which is great because it really sucks when you're distracted from running the business. But for that couple months where the lawyers are haggling over the little bitty things, what can happen is the 2 companies can kind of fall out of love because they're not engaged with each other, right? And that can be bad. And what happened in his other case was it really came down to the last day. He had already told all the employees they were going to be acquired by Symantec, and the Symantec CEO and the company's CEO got in an argument, and the Symantec CEO called off the deal. But a lot of it was because they had fallen out of love, right? That they hadn't really talked in 2 months, and he forgot why he was buying the company. So Tim he put together a campaign. If you've seen Glengarry Glen Ross, it's called Always Be Closing, right? ABC. And every day I would go out and I would find some nugget that Tim would send to someone in RSA. It wouldn't go to the same person every day. It would go to different people. But for example, it might be something like, hey, we installed at Citi today and it took 36 man hours. How long did it take you guys to install at Citi? It was like 9 months, right? So he would send that to the service team. Or there was a big attack on the Union Bank website. He would send a little summary, just a paragraph, to the CEO of RSA and say, hey, we found this today, right? Here's this cool attack that's in the news and we are the ones that found it for them. Or he would send bug stats or whatever, right? And just every day we would send something across to somebody else to keep them in love, right? And I think that was a really smart thing to do because I could see what would happen if people fell out of love. And the last thing I'll say about the diligence process, keep it as quiet as possible, as long as possible with people in your company. When we got the first offer for $200 million, it was May or June timeframe, we walked away originally because our board basically said, no way. There are still executives that will not speak to me because we walked away from that, even though we ended up closing the deal. What happens, though, is if you tell people, they get out their spreadsheets and they compute how much they can pay for their retirement home, and then, not their vacation home, and then when you walk away, they are devastated. So we got better about it, but the very first time we told way too many people, and it got really bad. People got really bitter, and you have to walk away from these things 3 or 4 times in a lot of cases. So keep it as absolutely quiet as possible, as long as you can. And even when we were doing the diligence and we were coming in, it's one of the reasons we came in on the weekends, so people wouldn't see us practicing, but they knew something was going on. We just told them it was Series C stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That we were out raising Series C and we had to do these presentations for Series C. We lied to people. We did. We lied to people. What we would do is we would say, well, it's for our next funding round, which was technically true, right? It was either going to be acquisition or Series C, but I don't have any regrets on that because, again, if it had fallen through, holy cow, people would have been disappointed. So that was a big lesson that we learned. Okay, sorry, total core dump on acquisitions and exits and such, but any particular question?
What's next for you?
Yeah. So first of all, if anyone has to leave, I have some cards here, and if you have specific questions, I'm happy to follow up one-on-one. If there's things we didn't get to, I'm more than happy to do that. Next for me, so I'm writing a book on how I believe we can use software to remove unconscious bias in the workplace through things like how you create job descriptions and how you do interviewing and how you do promotions and compensation and mentoring and all sorts of things. So I'm writing a book about it, and then I'm probably going to start a company to build the software.
When is the book ready?
I'm sorry, when is the book ready? Chapter 1 will be done on Tuesday, so probably a year. But
We'll check it too.
yeah, so I'm definitely taking my time, spending some time with my son, and it's learning to breathe again. So it's a very good thing. But the startup thing was the best thing that I ever did. Series A was the hardest thing in the world, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I applaud all of you. What you're doing is hard. I love the fact that you're here supporting each other, and that you all can help each other. Someone asked about getting up every day. You know, it is sort of like, hi, I'm Laura and I'm an entrepreneur. Have a sponsor, right? Get somebody who you can call and say, man, I got the crap beat out of me today. And they could say, yeah, those guys are idiots. They weren't thinking, they have no idea about how many golfers there are that need to know where the pin is at the next hole or whatever, right? So a buddy system can be really helpful, especially if you don't have a co-founder. I think that could be a really good thing. So just a thought. And maybe someday I'll build it into my software and it could give you accolades. Don't worry, those guys are so good.
Educational.
That's right.
Thank you, Laura. She's our advisor, and I think we benefit from her wise experience, and she will continue to feed us, and then we all get the benefit. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you for coming.